Hi math class, welcome back to another lesson. Great work yesterday on lesson 66, writing your ratios for the sentences, solving for your problems, making sure to show all of your working calculations. Great job on your number families, and then also great job finding your area. Remember, when we're looking for the area of a rectangle, we have to multiply the length by the width. Also, please don't forget to add in your square units. So if your rectangle has yards, in your answer for your area, you're going to have square yards. If you have feet in your rectangle for the measurements, in your answer for your area, once again, you're going to have square feet. So don't forget that. For today's class, we're going to be looking at lesson 67, parts 1 through 5. So let's get started. So let's look at part 1. It tells us that some of these fractions equal whole numbers, and that some of the fractions equal mixed numbers. Your job is going to be to write the mixed number or the whole number for each fraction. So let's do the first three together. So I have my board right here. For part 1a, we have 36 divided by 4. Right, so some of these are going to equal a mixed number, and some of them are going to equal a whole number. Right, so our first job is going to be to try to divide 36 by 4. So we can skip count by 4s, or we can use our multiplication chart. And if we look at the 4 column, we're going to try to go up all the way to 36. If we don't get exactly 36, that means we're going to have a mixed number. So it'll give us a whole number plus the fraction, what we have to add. Right, we know that 4 can divide into 36 an even number of times, right? It'll be 9. So for part A, our answer is going to be just a whole number, just 9. If we look at part B, we have the fraction 36 dividing by 5, or 36 over 5. So what we have to do is we can skip count by 5s, and we're going to try to get to 36. Right, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and then if I go one more, it'll be 40, so that'll be too much. So if we skip counted by 7s, we get to 35, but that's one less than 36. So I'm going to have to add a fraction, right? So to get from 35 to 36, I have to add 1. But since this is a fraction, it's going to have to be over the same bottom number. If this is over 5, in my answer, it's also going to have to be over 5. So my answer is going to be 7 plus 1 over 5, or 7 plus 1/5. For part C, we have 36 dividing by 9. Right, so that's similar to what we did in part A, except we're now dividing the 36 by 9 instead of by 4. So since we know that 36 divided by 4 equals 9, for part C, 36 divided by 9, we know it's going to equal the whole number 4. So it's not going to be a mixed number. So now what I want you guys to do is look at parts D and E and try to solve for those. I'll give you a hint. Both of those will be mixed numbers. So you're going to have a whole number plus a fraction. So you can pause the video now and work on part number 1. Alright guys, so welcome back to part number 2. I'll read what it says. This table is supposed to show the numbers for the grapes that were ripe and the number of grapes that were not ripe in Brandon Vineyard and Eden Vineyard. There are no numbers in this table, but you're given 4 facts about the numbers for the cells. So I'll quickly draw this table in, and then we have 4 facts that we're going to use to help us. Alrighty, so we have our Brandon Vineyard, Eden, and then the total for both. Then we have how many grapes were ripe, not ripe, and then total grapes. Okay, so this is our chart. So what we have to do is we're going to fill in 4 of the missing numbers. Then we're going to have to solve for the rest of the numbers. So fact 1 tells us In Brandon Vineyard, 1,041 grapes were not ripe. So we're going to look where Brandon Vineyard is, and we're going to look for not ripe, right? And that's going to be 1,041. Our next fact tells us in Eden Vineyard, 7,084 grapes are ripe, right? So I'm going to look where Eden Vineyard is, and then where my ripe category is, and write 7,084. My next fact, fact 3, tells us in Brandon Vineyard, there were 9,500 ripe grapes. So once again, I'm going to look for Brandon Vineyard, my ripe grapes, and it's going to be 9,500. So now what we have to do is read fact 4. In Eden Vineyard, there were 2,579 more ripe grapes than not ripe grapes, right? So they don't give us the number. 2,579 is not how many grapes were not ripe, but it's the difference between how many were ripe and not ripe. So what we're going to have to do in order to solve for this number right here, where this box is we're going to have to make a number family. So I'll draw it right underneath. Once again, I'll read fact 4. In Eden Vineyard, there were 2,579 more ripe grapes than not ripe grapes. So we have our keyword more, so that will give us a number family. So once again, what we're doing is making our number family for fact number 4, right? And our difference number is 2,579. And then we have to, once again, let's read fact 4 to find out if there are more ripe or not ripe grapes to see what will be our big and what will be our small number. Right, in Eden Vineyard, there were 2,579 more ripe grapes. That tells us that ripe will be our big number, and then not ripe will be our small number. What we know here is that how many were ripe. We know that 7,084 grapes were ripe. So this number, I'm going to put right above the ripe. So what we're trying to find out is how many were not ripe, which is this number right here. So since I have these two numbers, I'm trying to find this number, which will be my small number. Right? In order to find that, I'm going to have to subtract 7,084 from 2,579. So now all you guys have to do is subtract. Just in the sake of time, I'll solve it, and your answer is going to be 4,505. So that tells us that in the Eden Vineyard, 4,505 grapes were not ripe. So now what we've solved is these 4 numbers. We've entered them into our chart. What I want you guys to do for the next step is now to solve for the rest of the numbers. So there's 5 missing numbers. Remember, you can make a number family going down. If you made one going down, this would be your small number, this would be your small number, and this missing number would be your big number. So it would come at the end of your number family. So you can go down, or you could also make a number family that goes across. So it can go this way. In that case, this would be your small number, this would be your small number, and this missing number would be your big number. So now what I want you guys to do is, using this table that we filled in with the 4 numbers, find the other 5 missing numbers. 3, 4, yeah, 5. So make your number families. Remember, you can go down or you can go across. And then once you've found your missing numbers, what you're going to have to do is, on the back of your worksheet, you have 3 questions. So then you can answer those 3 questions. So you can pause the video now, finish up your chart, find all the missing numbers using your number families, and then answer those 3 questions. And then I'll see you in part 3. So welcome back to part 3. In part 3, what you're going to do is you're going to write equations that show fractions that are equal and the fraction of 1 that you multiply by. So I'll explain what we have to do. So once again, we're looking at part 3. If you look, you have 2 images for part A, and then you have 2 images for part B. So we'll do part A together, and then I want you guys to try to do part B on your own. All we're trying to do in part 3, guys, is show that these fractions are equal or equivalent. So what you guys have is you have 3 missing blanks. In this first blank that you have, what you're going to do is write the fraction for this first picture in A. Right? Remember, the top number will be how many parts are shaded. We have 1 part shaded, so that will be your top number, and then we have 2 parts in 1 unit. So your 2 will be the bottom number. We're going to leave this next blank empty, and then in the last blank, right after the equal sign, you're going to write your fraction for the second image for part A. Right? So we can count how many parts are shaded. There's 4 parts that are shaded. Oops. My bad. Right? And there's 8 parts in 1 unit. So the fraction will be 4/8. So now what we did, guys, is for the first blank, we wrote the fraction for the first picture in A. For the blank after the equal sign, we wrote our fraction for the second image in part A. And what we have to do now is find the missing numbers. In order for these fractions to be equal, we need both our top number and our bottom number to be the same number. Right? So we're going to try to figure out 1 multiplied by what number gives us 4. Right? It's going to be 4. And 2 multiplied by what number will give us 8? It's also going to be 4. Right? 4/4 equals 1. So that shows that these fractions are equivalent, or they are the same fraction. So that's all we have to do. So now in part B, you have a different set of images. What you're going to have to do is in the first blank, write the fraction for that first picture. In the second blank, you're going to leave it blank for now. And then in the third blank, after the equal sign, you're going to write the fraction for that second picture in part B. Then you're going to fill this in. Both of these numbers should be the same. If they're not the same, that means that your fractions are incorrect. So try working on them again. So you can pause the video now, and then we're going to look at part 4. It's not on your worksheet. All we're going to do is introduce a new concept. So I'll read what it says. I've attached the image from your textbook in the post, so please have a look at that. So I'll read what it says for number 4. Follow along. If a number family shows a fraction and a whole number, you have to change the whole number into a fraction. So once again, if a number family shows a fraction and a whole number, you have to change the whole number into a fraction. The bottom number of the fraction you change the whole number into is the same as the bottom number of the other fraction in the family. So here's a number family with a fraction and a whole number. So then here's the example that they give you in your textbook. Right, we have our fraction here, and we have our whole number. So what we have to do in order to solve for this number family is change this one into a fraction, and then we can solve. So it tells us in your book, here's the whole number has to be changed into a fraction with 7 as the bottom number. So what we're going to do is cross out the 1 and put 7 as the bottom number, because that's what we have here. But our top number is also going to be over 7. So here's the family with the 1 crossed out and 7 as the bottom and the top number written in its place. Remember, we made it over 7 because this fraction is over 7. Since we changed the bottom number to 7, we have to change the top number also into 7. So that means our fraction will be 7/7. Now you just work the problem to find the top of the missing number. So here, right, once again, we're trying to solve for a number family. our bottom number is going to also be 7 because our bottom number never changes. The only thing that will change is our top number. Here we have a 7 as our top number. Here we have 3. Since we're trying to find a small number, we're going to have to subtract. So 7 minus 3 will give us 4. So our answer is going to be 4 over 7. So remember, to work the problem just like other problems you have with mixed numbers, you have to change the whole number into a fraction. So all we did, guys, is we learned that when we want to solve a number family that has a fraction and a whole number, we have to change the whole number into a fraction, and then, just like a regular number family, we can solve for the missing number. So we don't have any work for problem 4 or for part 4, just to review this concept once again. And now let's look at part 5. This will be our last part for today. So in part 5, we're adding, subtracting, and multiplying fractions. So your job is going to be to solve. We'll do the first 2 together, and then I want you guys to do the last 2 on your own. If we look at part 5a, we have the fraction 3 over 5 multiplied by 7 over 8. Remember, when we're multiplying fractions, both your top number and your bottom number will change. In order to find my top number, I'm going to multiply my 2 top numbers together. 3 multiplied by 7 will give me 21. And then in order to find my bottom number, which will also change, I'm going to multiply the 2 bottom numbers. 5 multiplied by 8 gives me 40. So once again, when we're multiplying our fractions, your top number will change and your bottom number will change. To find your top number, you're going to multiply the 2 top numbers, and to find your bottom number, you multiply your 2 bottom numbers. Remember, when we're adding or subtracting fractions, your bottom numbers have to be the same. When we're multiplying fractions, they do not have to be the same. So let's look at part B. In part B, we have the fraction 1 over 7 plus 8 over 7. Right, so we're not multiplying the fractions now, we're adding them. So in order to add, both of my fractions have to have the same bottom number, right? And they do in this case, they're both over 7. But my bottom number will not change when I'm adding fractions, so it's going to stay as 7. The only number that will change is my top number. So we have 1 plus 8, which is 9. So my answer, guys, is going to be 9 over 7, or 9/7. So now what I want you guys to do is practice part C and part D. In part C, you're going to be subtracting fractions. But you have to watch out because you have a fraction and a whole number. What you're going to have to do in part C is change the 1 into a fraction, and then you can subtract. And then in part D, all you're doing is multiplying your 2 fractions. They don't have to have the same bottom number, and just remember that both your top and your bottom number will change. So great work, guys, and I'll see you in our next class.